church benches and into the trenches. Let's make a righteous ruckus.
Hi, welcome to this episode of the Righteous Ruckus podcast. I'm your host, Riley Lowe, and this week I want to talk about how can one of the most powerful people to ever live, given that power by God, feel like he just wanted to die. You know, when you look at the world today, it's very easy, which I've done a podcast on this. If it feels like the world is just crushing in on you right now with all the news and everything that's going on, like I just found out yesterday, I think it was, that Iran is now launching rockets into Israel and all this stuff, and there's so many kinetic wars going on in the world right now, and it just feels like with finances and the world and economies, and it just feels like everything's just crushing in on you sometimes, right? I've felt like that a lot lately, actually. And I encourage you, if you haven't, take a social media fast, take a news fast. I've talked about both of those before. And just try to focus on God, all right? Sometimes you just got to step back. It's kind of like, think about it this way, whenever it's easy when you get into a debate or an argument, and you just have a simple misunderstanding with someone. It's easy to get super emotionally involved in that to the point where you can't really see what's going on. And what happens is when you're able to step back and look at things objectively, then a lot of times you're just able to kind of gain your train of thought and see things for what they truly are, instead of what you're being led to believe or what your emotions are trying to make you believe. Because it's super easy to be just blinded to the truth if you're running on pure emotion. And it's easy to run on pure emotion in an argument or a debate, and that's where, quite honestly, usually the person, like, let's say if two people are having a debate and there's a third party watching or a group of people watching, usually the person that's the calmest and that tries to speak the most logic is going to win that debate. It's just the way it is. But it's so easy, man, with the way everything's going in. You got dudes becoming chicks, chicks becoming dudes, and a whole smorgasbord of people thinking that it's okay to do different things sexually in the world. And it's just the depravity of the world can really wear on you sometimes. It really can. It wears on me. I'm sure it wears on everybody. It's easy to think that you're all alone. All right. It's easy to think that. Like, I remember I've mentioned before on prior podcasts, and the thing is, I know I wasn't alone, but man, there's times you feel alone. I remember like I've mentioned before about when I stood up in a previous career I had, and I just kind of stood up. I say stand up, like I've said before, it's like the weakest form of standing up you can do. All I did was say, hey, man, I really just don't want to participate, in celebrating this gay stuff. You just don't send me any more information on it. And they come down pretty hard on me, to the point where there was a point where I just felt like I was the only one. It wasn't true. I wasn't the only one. I think I may have been the only one, especially in that area, in that refinery, that actually said anything. But I know I wasn't the only one that felt that way, and sometimes you just got to do the right thing. But so I want to talk about the prophet Elijah. All right, the prophet Elijah. Now, here's the thing. Now, a lot of people are familiar with this story. Elijah was a prophet of God, and he was awesome. I'm talking like this guy, I don't know, I guess you could use the term rock star of the prophets, right? He was super, super awesome. I think he actually is him and Moses, appeared on the Mount of Transfiguration when Jesus went up there to a few of the disciples. And so, to have that that stature is incredible in itself. But here's the thing. So let's look here. So that if you remember when Elijah was on Mount Carmel, all right, he's up there and he's confronting the prophets in quotation marks, these magicians, if you will, of Baal, right? He's confronting them, and he actually says, "All right, we're going to have a competition here," and he, he like throws his staff down, and it turns into a snake, all right, and then there's like 6 or 7 of these other, magic men of Baal, and so they throw their staffs down, and they turn into snakes. So I mean, it shows you that Satan can, and the dark side, if you will, can work some fancy stuff. Right? That's impressive. That's not like pulling a bird out of a hat or a rabbit out of a hat. That's not sleight of hand stuff. It probably actually happened like that. So that's some dark magic stuff. But then, of course, Elijah's staff swallows up those other snakes, right? And so he's like, okay. And then like the final straw was they build the sacrifice, this altar, right? And they get wood all over it. And he's telling them, all right, you guys, call down fire from your God. Call down fire. Have Baal light this on fire. And they're like, okay. And then, man, they have a big old to-do about it. And they're really, really trying hard. And he's making fun of them, right? He's mocking them. He's like, try harder. And actually, at one point, it's funny because it says, whereas he says, oh, maybe he's busy. There you go. Perhaps he is in deep thought or busy or traveling. And actually, busy can be translated, and maybe he's going to the restroom, right? Maybe he's pooping, right? maybe he's busy pooping, right? He ain't got time for you. He's in the thinker position right now, wondering, right? So it was to poke fun at him, and just show how foolish they were being. And so then, of course, he has them bring a bunch of water and just completely drench and soak his altar that he was supposed to call God to light on fire, and then he calls God to light it on fire. God just burns it up. It's awesome, right? It's just an awesome display. Of course, then after that, as soon as that happened, then we get the person who basically, I don't think anybody names their kids these days, is Jezebel. All right, Jezebel says, "I'm gonna attack him. We're gonna cut his head off, and we're gonna get him because he embarrassed me." Right? That's her revenge. She wants revenge. Well, so Elijah takes off. Now it's kind of ironic there, reading the story, that he just commanded God and had God do this awesome display through him. And then he says, nope, I'm scared. I'm tucking tail. I'm running. All right. And so he heads out of there. And so he flees to Horeb, and because Jezebel is wanting to have him killed. And so so Jezebel sends a messenger to Elijah and says, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, by this time tomorrow I don't make your life like that of one of them. Elijah was afraid, ran for his life. He came to Beersheba in Judah. He left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. He might die. This is quote, I have had enough. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and he fell asleep. He's just praying his heart out that he just wants to die. That's pretty rough there. Of course, then an angel wakes him up and says, get up and eat. And then there was some bread there and some water. He ate, he drank, and lay down. Of course, this this is all in 1 Kings 19 is where I'm reading from. Just I didn't really preface that. You probably want to know kind of where I'm reading from. 1 Kings 19. Get up and eat. Right. So there's this meal prepared for him. There's the angel. The angel of the Lord came back a second time after, because he ate and he drank and then he laid back down. He was like, no, nice try, but I've had enough. I just want to die. And so then the angel came back a second time and touched him, nudged him, hey, get up and drink, for the journey is too much for you. So he got up and he ate and he drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled for 40 days and 40 nights. Where have we heard that before? Maybe Noah. Actually, and then Jesus, when he was resurrected, walked around for 40 days showing everybody his resurrected body. Kind of interesting how that happens a lot. So he shows up in a cave and spends the night. Here you go. The Lord appears to Elijah, and the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? He replied, I've been very zealous. In other words, I'm trying to do your will, Lord. I've been very zealous for the Lord Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left. He's like, I'm the only prophet of God left. Everybody's abandoned you. The whole country, everybody's abandoned you. You see where this is going. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. The Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. This is a violent, violent storm. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face, and he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? He replied, I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. So he said that exact same thing, and then God said, I'm going to pass by you, and you're going to hear me and see me. And then he says, he's like, okay, this is cool, let's do this. And then God asks him again, what are you doing here? And he gives him the exact same thing. And so then, listen to this. The Lord said to him, go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus, where you will get there. And when you get there, anoint Hazael, king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. In other words, he's getting his succession. He's getting his marching orders here. Now listen to here. I'm going to skip that one in a couple verses, and then here in verse 18, 1 Kings 19:18. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, and whose mouths have not kissed him. So in case you're not keeping count as you read through the Bible, there was at least 1 million Israelites that were wandering in the desert for 40 years, right? At least 1 million. And then here they've had all these victories. They're doing all this stuff. They're taking over the promised land. And then they just turn away from God. And then so you go from a couple million down, it gets whittled down to where Elijah believes he's the only one left. He thinks he's it. Which is crazy to think that. So let's look. You heard him say, he just said, I want to die. He prayed to God, I want to die. God even sent an angel, cooked him a meal, fed him. He lays down, wants to die again, tells him, get up, go for 40 days and 40 nights to this mountain. And then he goes there and he's hanging out there. God says, what's going on? He says, I just want to die. And he says, okay, I'm going to show my glory. Okay, I'm going to hide you in the cleft of the rock. And that's the famous hymn, right? You're going to be in this cave, and I'm going to pass by. You're going to get to experience my glory. And afterwards he says, all right, what are you doing here now, Elijah? You got to see the real deal. And what's Elijah say? He says, I want to die. So this is from the Mayo Clinic, right? Listen to this. Depression is a mood disorder that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. Also called major depressive disorder or clinical depression, it affects how you feel, think, and behave and can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. You may have trouble doing normal day-to-day activities, and sometimes you may feel as if life isn't worth living. Sound like Elijah? It sure sounds like Elijah to me. So here's what I want you to notice here. Elijah was about as close to God as you could get as far as how his relationship with God, right? So he was committed to God. He was sent to confront the prophets of Baal, confront the Israelites, confront everybody with truth, which that's what's so desperately needed in our culture today, is truth. So he spoke God's words to a king who often rejected the message just because it was Elijah who brought it. Elijah was faithful to carry out his ministry for God, and this caused great tension and animosity between him and the king, who wanted Elijah's loyalty to be directed toward him. As a result, Elijah was on the run at times, having to hide from the angry king who meant him harm. Alone and isolated from the fellowship of others, keep in mind that, alone and isolated from the fellowship of others who were also serving God, Elijah sometimes wondered if he was the only person left in the land who was truly following his Lord. So that's what he kept saying. He's like, God, I'm it. And once they kill me, everything is done. Nobody in the whole world will believe in God. That's what he thought he was facing there. It seemed like insurmountable odds, right? Everywhere you look in the culture today, in the world today, it seems like nothing but war, pestilence, debauchery, famine. It's just awful, It's nuts the way that the world looks like it's getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. But yet, the thing is, remember what God said after he kept saying, look, I just want to die. He said, okay, here's your marching orders. I got 7,000 people left, and you need to go round them up because we're going to build a great nation out of these people. And this is the thing. It can seem so dark when you look around today, but guess what's happening? There's a remnant. You hear that term, right? If you've been a Christian for very long, you'll hear God uses the remnant often, right? So we are the remnant. If you believe in Jesus and you have accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior and you believe in God, well, guess what? We got work to do. We got messages to send out. We got to put boots on the ground. We got work to do to spread the word, because that's our job. Our job is to get people to heaven. You've heard me say it before, our job is to make heaven crowded. I actually got that from a t-shirt that my wife ordered, but it's an awesome saying, make heaven crowded. It's an impossible feat, but it's something we should strive for, right? So this is the thing. Today, God often speaks through the gentle and obvious rather than the spectacular and unusual. I'm a nobody. You're a nobody. God can use the whispers. You get enough people whispering, it can be loud. It really can. And if you whisper and then the next person starts to whisper and somebody, it can be like, I can't concentrate because there's so much noise in here. Right? And so God has work for us to do, even when we feel fear and failure. God always has more resources and people than we know about. We do not realize what God has prepared for us. Right? We just have to step out in faith. Although we might wish to do amazing miracles for God, we should instead focus on developing a relationship with Him. The miracle of Elijah's life was his very personal relationship with God, and that miracle is available to us. Because this is the thing. When we think about how amazing, all the amazing miracles, I just named some, right, that God accomplished through Elijah. We need to focus on Elijah's relationship with God. Everything that happened in Elijah's life began as a result of his response to the same miracle that is now available to us, to know God personally, right? That's the thing. We have that ability right now. Back then, they had to look forward in hope of a Messiah. We can look back and know it happened. We have the book right here, folks. We know it happened, right? So whenever it seems like the world just gets you down, and this is what's crazy about feeling overwhelmed, is you have the tendency and the desire to withdraw. And what we need to do is the exact opposite. The cure and the help for that is the exact opposite, and that's to lean in to God, lean into worship, lean into prayer, lean into fellowshipping with believers, lean into all that, lean in to reading the Word of God, and see what God will whisper to you.